Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, addiction specialist and social worker. I want you to know that the following is based on my strength, hope, and experience. I think that's what's very important for you to understand. And I hope you enjoy the show. And if you need any help, please go and get it. God bless. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. John Kelly, addiction specialist here, and welcome to Thrive. This is our channel on addictions, filled with all kinds of videos on education. And no matter what your addiction is, pretty much, it's up on here. Except if you have a sexual addiction, they're not up yet. All right. Bottom line is that a long time ago, I really was involved in gambling. I know a lot about gambling. I was a pathological gambler, and I want to get the word out to you. I got it out to you in my first book 20 some years ago, Warning Signs, a guidebook for parents. And also in my new book, which is a few years old, Discovering Lazarus. And it's more or less gets into John Kelly, the good, the bad, and the ugly of John Kelly, John Kelly's addictions, and how I went from addict, severe cocaine addict, pathological gambler, moving on into becoming a counselor, doing counseling work, volunteer work at first, then counseling work, moved on to become a psychotherapist, and eventually on to profiling and what I do now. So anyway, here I am, and let's get started. I think you're going to find this very interesting, especially if you're into gambling or anybody in your family is involved in problematic gambling or they are addicted to gambling. Okay, that's what we're going to discuss today. You know, if you know someone that has an addiction to gambling, let me tell you, gambling is a central nervous system stimulant, big time, big time. Gambling is very similar to cocaine. It's very similar to methamphetamine as far as stimulation to your central nervous system goes. Right? They're very stimulating. And a lot of people have a problem with gambling. And you're going to see more and more and more of it as you see more and more and more casinos and sports books opening up. And therefore, when somebody has a problem with it, many times they get addicted to it, and that's when the problems take place. Because when you get addicted to gambling, it's quite like being addicted to, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, alcohol, any other drug. With gambling, there's a cliche that I think a lot of gamblers know of, and it keeps them in the game. Keeps them in the game. The cliche is the day you lay off is the day it'll pay off. And that's why a lot of gamblers can't quit because they know at some point percentages will be with them, at least they think so, and they'll hit a major jackpot. See, that's the problem with gambling. Like if I talk to you about doing heroin, or I talk to you about doing cocaine or meth, and I talk to you about the end of the line being, death or incarceration, being in prison somewhere, I mean, you would understand that. But with gambling, there's always that possibility the next time you go out that you can end up hitting a jackpot or winning a lot of money. And that's what keeps them going. The big win, the stimulation of the jackpot, the big win. It's a very stimulating experience. And it can be a very, very destructive experience as well. Check out the advertisements from the gambling industry, especially casinos. And you'll see in the fine print, it'll say, if you have a gambling problem, please call this number, right? Because they know how addicting gambling is, and they know every which way in the world to seduce you into gambling and coming to that casino by giving you all the freebies and whatever else they're going to give you, and they will. definitely come up with a lot of freebies, as long as you're going to gamble, as long as you're going to give them the action, they're going to give you the freebies. There's no question about it. But have you ever seen on a pack of cigarettes, if you're having a problem with these cigarettes, here's an 800 number for you to call? Because with all the casinos and everything, and whenever they're putting on any gambling advertising, they always have, if you're a problem gambler, you think you have a gambling problem, please call this number. They have an 800 number there. Well, you never saw that on a pack of cigarettes, regardless of how destructive they can be, right? How about on a bottle of booze? Do you ever see it on a bottle of alcohol? If you're a problem drinker, or if you're having a problem with alcohol, here's an 800 number to get help. You never see it on a bottle of alcohol either, do you? But we're gambling, not that 800 number flashing all the time. It's right in front of you. You just go down and look in the fine print. It is right there and very available to see. And I'm glad they do, because some people really need to take advantage of that 800 number and get themselves some help. There's no question about it. And the reason for all that is because they know how addictive gambling can be. Gambling can be very addictive, very, very destructive. Casinos and gambling in itself can be very destructive because it'll just keep you coming back. Like I said, not only with the freebies, but the stimulation of advertising, the jackpots, and how you can basically win $1 million or become a millionaire if you hit the right jackpot. The best way to understand if you have a problem or not with gambling is to ask yourself a question. Is gambling causing me any problems in my life? Is it causing me to be out of control for any reason in my life? That's an important question anybody with a gambling problem has to ask themselves. Is it causing any problems with my family? That's a major problem, because usually if you're a pathological gambler and you get addicted to gambling, it's going to come out in a lot of different ways, and it's going to upset the family in a lot of different ways. No question about it. There'll be a lot of turmoil. Very similar to somebody that's alcoholic, alcohol abusive or alcohol dependent. They're going to carry on in the house, and a lot of them are going to have a loss of control. It's like some people can have a few social drinks, right? And some people can go into a casino and gamble their 20 bucks or whatever and enjoy the day and leave. Or some people can't have a few drinks, they have to get drunk and plastered out of their minds, right? Versus a person that goes into a casino and just can't spend a $20 bill and play 5 cent slots or something like that, that they got to go all in, and then they're going to have a complete loss of control as well. Just like the alcoholic can't stop drinking, the pathological gambler really can't stop gambling. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. When you look at the insidiousness of gambling, it kind of boils down to, when you become addicted, it's just like any other drug. All right. Any other substance. All right. You're going to see that as somebody will lie, cheat, and steal and do whatever they got to do to keep their cocaine or meth addiction going, you will find out that a gambler will do the same thing. They'll be lying, cheating, stealing, or doing whatever because their drug is actual money, right? Without the money, they can't get the stimulation. They can't get the excitement of the big gamble, the big shot at the big jackpot. So it's very important to understand that. And, it may not be cocaine, and it may not be heroin or, alcohol or any other substance, but gambling is just as insidious. Take my word for it. Again, it is an extremely powerful central nervous system. And, the stimulation can cause a lot of excitement and a very high rush of stimulation. You know, the more you gamble, the more excited you get, and the closer you feel you're getting to hitting a jackpot or making a big score and winning a lot of money. Very similar to meth and cocaine in a lot of ways, because the highs you get in the beginning from gambling get lower and lower and lower as they do with meth and cocaine. And eventually, you've stimulated so many neurotransmitters, brain chemicals, for instance, dopamine, that, it takes a while to replace them, and they're not being replaced quick enough. So you start to crash more and become more depressed. And as you end up losing and owing money, you become more anxious as well. So there's a lot of uh, mental problems with gambling addiction. There's just no question about it. Also, something else I'd like to bring up is that when you look at uh, cocaine, and again I'm going back, but cocaine or heroin or any other illegal drug, you're talking about, if you're addicted and you don't stop and you don't try to go into recovery and you don't get counseling or you don't go to rehab, I mean, probably the bottom line is you're going to go to jail, all right, or you're going to end up dying. But with gambling, again, there's no end, because there's always that last chance. Okay. I mean, there's no chance of you overdosing, right? I mean, when you go out, no matter when you go out to gamble, there's always that possibility, that you could hit that jackpot. Yeah, the odds are against you, but there's that possibility. With heroin or coke or methamphetamine, you pretty much know what the end of the line is going to be. But with gambling, you never know. I mean, anything can happen, and you could just be extremely lucky, which you're betting on, pun intended, that day. Okay, that you're going to make a score, and in a way, it's the worst thing that can happen to you, because you will not be able to hit bottom yet, because making a score in a casino or wherever, hitting a jackpot, is just going to raise you back up, and then you're going to have to come down again before you hit that low, that bottom, that may make you make that 800 call, and hopefully may get you into some counseling. Another question I like to ask gamblers is, how do you feel? How does the high and feeling of the winning compare to the lows and feeling of the losing? See, this is a simple question that 99% of gamblers do not ask themselves. But if they want to get at, and if they want to get honest with themselves and ask themselves, how does the high and the feeling of winning compare to the lows and the feeling of losing? Because if they get honest with themselves and they compare how they feel when they win versus how they feel when they lose, especially after there's been a considerable amount of time that's gone by, and at this point, it's not just showing up once in a while to gamble, but they are addicted to gambling, and gambling is becoming a very regular, fun thing to do, or an everyday thing to do. Believe me, they will tell you those lows outweigh the feelings of the wins in the winning, if they get honest with themselves. And if you have somebody in the family that you think you want to intervene on, you may want to ask them that question. Just ask them that question. Usually the answer would be, the feeling I get when I lose is much worse than how good I feel when I win at this point. In the beginning, it can not have much of a consequence, but as they progress into gambling addiction, I mean, the walls start caving in and everything starts to get worse. And gamblers begin to feel really, really worse. Okay. As the time goes by, the lows of the losing will really take hold of the gambler mentally. I mean, there will be major problems. And you'll start to see these problems come out in the family. Family members know if their loved one has a gambling problem. And they know that that gambling problem is creating other family problems throughout the house. For instance, there may be more arguing, maybe fighting, maybe more name calling. Sometimes the fights get physical. It's very similar to living in the house with a severe alcoholic or a severe drug addict. I mean, this dysfunction in the family just takes place and has an effect on all the family members. No question about it. It will really wreak hell and wreak havoc with the whole family. The family will always be walking around like eggshells when they're around the gambler because they don't know if he's won or lost, so they don't know if he's happy or in a bad mood, okay? Or maybe he's really angry because he lost, just like we've seen with some angry alcoholics and angry drug addicts. So the people in the house, the kids in the house, the wife in the house, will be kind of walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around because what kind of mood is he in today? Is he Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde today? So they're always under that stress, under that trauma, and watching how they move around and how they interact with the gambler. They don't want to say the wrong thing to set them off, and especially if he's had a losing streak. And this just creates an abusive and dysfunctional family, no doubt about it. Usually in the family that causes a lot of problems, the family of a pathological gambler, usually you're going to have a lot of lying, stealing, outbursts of anger, name calling. There's going to be fighting over paychecks. There's going to be fighting over bills not being paid. This money is going to be altered and it's going to be stolen. It's going to be maneuvered and manipulated in order to keep the addiction alive. Just like a heroin addiction or cocaine addiction, a gambling addiction wants to continue. Okay. And the only way that can be done is if the money's available. And lots of times for that money to be available to go gamble and go lose in a casino or someplace or on a football game, that means some bills don't get paid. That means some paychecks end up being gambled away. And then for most cases, it can be very abusive to any children in the house because they can be around all this anger and these outbursts and violence. And even if the children are alienated, even if it only goes that far, remember that abuse is neglect too. So if you're neglecting your child or your children for any reason, it's abuse. Neglect is abuse. And pathological gamblers usually are not happy people. Eventually, if the gambling doesn't stop, the family will end up in financial ruin. I will tell you that right now. I mean, the only reason the casino wins is because the odds are way in their favor. So eventually, the casino always wins. And again, that's why they have the 800 number from Problem Gambler, which packs of cigarettes don't have or bottles of alcohol don't have. So that's what you got to watch, that the family can end up in financial ruin. I've seen it. I've been through it along with my cocaine addiction. Believe me when I tell you, it's hard to come back from. But if I can come back from it, so can you. Okay, that's the bottom line. Gambling addiction can also create a lot of depression throughout the family and anxiety. It can cause a lot of mental illness throughout the family because everybody's tense, everybody's scared. They're really scared, and that's abusive to have people traumatized in the family like that. And especially when it comes to pathological gamblers. I mean, when you talk about depression and pathological gambling, man, I'll tell you, eventually it will catch up to them just as depression catches up with the heroin addict, the cocaine addict, the alcoholic. I mean, I've seen it only, whether you believe this or not, gambling causes more and more severe depression, okay, than a lot of the other addictions. Roughly 1 in 5 pathological gamblers attempt suicide. 1 in 5 attempts suicide. Now, that's a piece we got from ABC. Okay. I knew it was high, but I didn't realize it was that high. It's probably even higher now. Okay. So try to understand that. 1 in 5 of pathological gamblers will commit suicide or try to commit suicide. Yeah, that's a rate higher than any other addictive disorder. That's higher. That's a higher rate than heroin, cocaine, and meth. Okay. I mean, bottom line, a gambler is definitely got a better shot, a better chance, no pun intended, at committing suicide versus any other addiction. Pretty scary stuff. And again, I guess that's why I got that 800 number out there. You know, there's a saying out there, and it really hit home for me in the end when I was recovering. You know, there's a saying, don't even make a mind bet because you could lose your mind. You know, don't even make a mind bet because you could lose your mind, right? And that saying picked up to me, you know, when I looked back and, you know, all the nights we were out and, you know, drinking and gambling and doing other drugs, whatever. I mean, and I will be honest, cocaine was my preferred drug of choice. Bottom line is that I saw a lot of gamblers lose everything, and I saw them commit suicide. Bottom line, you know, they couldn't take, you know, what they did to their families, and the guilt caused a lot of depression, and they committed suicide. There is a saying, don't even make a mind bet. Don't even make a mind bet. That means, like, when you're in recovery, don't even pretend you put $500 on Oakland to win the game. Okay. Because you could lose your mind. I mean, it's just a saying that goes around Gamblers Anonymous, GA. Bottom line, don't even make a mind bet because you could even lose your mind. And what they mean by that is you could get started back to betting on various sports games or back to the casinos once you're in recovery and in counseling and away from, uh, you know, all the action. Bottom line, next week we're going to be talking about how you can stop gambling if you want to. Key phrase, if you want to. You gotta want to. No different than recovering from alcohol, recovering from other drugs, you know, any other addiction. Bottom line, you gotta want to do it. So we'll be talking about that next week. Thank you so much for allowing us into your home today. Hope you got something out of this. If you need help, please go and get it for you and your family's sake. And most importantly, take care of yourself out there. Thanks for tuning in. Make it a great day. And until we see you again, God bless.